Psychologists, therapists of Reddit, what are some bad pieces of mental health advice you've seen on social media? I saw someone tell another individual with schizophrenia that they didn't need medication. What they really needed is the motivation to cope with their mental illness symptoms. You are wasting 1/3 of your life sleeping, not just bullshit but a recipe for madness and death. In my day kids didn't have these so-called mental health issues. Get over it. That's because in the good old days, affected persons fell through the cracks and committed suicide, became homeless and vanished, or were locked up away from society until they died. So what you're seeing is survivorship bias. No other phrase angers me more than get over it. My parents told me to get over it when I bawled because my friend shot himself in the head with his grandfather's shotgun at the age of 12. When I was 16 and told my mother I had thoughts of killing myself, my father barged into my room and angrily yelled at me to get over it. When I finally got professional help a couple of years ago and my mother accidentally found my antidepressants, she told me flat out to get over it. I'm generally a passive, level-headed person these days, but no other phrase, when uttered in my presence, will make my rage level go from 0-100 faster than get over it. In any context. I have bipolar and some people that know ask if I've considered going for a no medication approach. Yeah. I tried. In that time I had more suicide attempts than I can count and I was extremely volatile and unstable. Medication has given me an actual opportunity to live and function like an adult. Do you know what it's like to not be suicidal or manic? It's really nice. I won't give this up for anything. This. You think I haven't also tried pulling up my bootstraps, eating well, exercising, sitting in the sun, etc. Meds get me to a place where I can actually exercise, eat well, etc etc. It is all important and works together, but first your brain has to function enough to do all the rest. Ask me how well I'm doing when I'm manic. On my 3rd straight day of no sleep, blew half my savings on alcohol and drugs, and haven't eaten in days. And I'm starting to hear things. Oh. I mean. Yeah. No meds. Super great. Double quote. Yeah, I tried a no medication approach once. For 19 years. Then I got so manic and did so many hard drugs they thought I was schizophrenic at first. But no man. I think you're right. This lithium is totally ruining my life. Typically they show pictures of sun breaking through trees and saying you don't need meds or nature is medicine or this is a real antidepressant, etc. Except some people do. Maybe they need both. Some people can find healing without medications. Some cannot. And that's okay. Obligatory, not a therapist, but a doctor. People telling others you can just choose to not be depressed. Or that you need to self-care yourself back to a normal psychological state. Yes. Healthy food, exercise, and enough sleep is definitely important. But too many people discredit the disease status of depression and claim it's just a feeling. No. Sadness is a feeling. True depression needs therapy and possibly medication. Everything happens for a reason. Don't let it get to you. Absolutely not the right advice to give someone and actually can make things a lot worse. I appreciate the sentiment, but it can come across as very hurtful and maybe even vindictive when said in certain scenarios. On the flip, one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from my therapist. This was in the pits of depression after someone had sexually assaulted me. She said that essentially I was holding on to a debt that would never be repaid and that in the end, the debt would only hurt me and not the person who owes me. It is best to write it off as bad debt and move on. Actually saved my life. That one piece of advice. Amateur analysis of mental health issue through comments or posts. You aren't qualified to diagnose someone. Don't do it. Even if you are. You should leave it to a professional environment where your words can actually have some positive impact rather than BTCH slapping someone with your bachelor's degree for upvotes. About 90% of the time on Reddit, if an argument is going south for someone, they'll always take out the "you need therapy" card. There could be a little sentence with someone expressing their anger at one particular moment that somehow reveals a lifelong cry for therapy. Just take that quote for example. God loves you just the way you are. Great for people with low self-esteem. I repeat it to myself sometimes. Horrible for abusers. And on the internet. The person at the other end can be either one. I want to offer a counterpoint here. I spent 5 years diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and told there was no treatment. One day I was discussing what it felt like on Reddit of all places and I got a reply being like, hey, that sounds like the textbook definition of dissociation. Lo and behold, I'm now diagnosed with DDNOS, dissociative disorder not otherwise specified, and doing a lot better. Not a therapist psychologist, but I'm bipolar II with ADHD and I get advertisements for natural cures for BPD and ADHD. Diet, exercise, and supplements help but don't cure. I need antipsychotic medications to keep me from having visual and auditory hallucinations. A special salad isn't gonna keep those at bay. The self-care approach of, oh, you deserve to take a nap when you have multiple things to do or buy that thing to make you happy is shitty in my opinion as well. Self-care is actually cleaning your disgusting depression den and doing the shitty on your to-do list that you've been putting off for weeks. When I'm hypermanic I spend excessive amounts of money on stupid shitty I don't need. So treat yourself is horrible advice. This is super specific to me. But I'm sure others have this mentality as well. I'm not a psychologist, but when I had my depression my roommate told me to just pull myself together. We don't live together anymore. I had a long-term partner when going through the worst year of my depression. I woke up with him one morning to a panic attack. Severely depressed. And essentially non-functional for the day. He got frustrated because he wanted to go shopping and shouted, "Why can't you just be normal?" Double quote. We then took a shower and I stood in the back of the tub crying and naked, not knowing what to say or do. While he just silently washed himself up in the warm water and glared at me with this look of judgment and exasperation. Felt bad. Med student and hopeful psychiatrist. Worst I've seen isn't the message, it's the context. Instagram models with their extravagant lifestyles quoting "love yourself." Maybe not understanding that a lot of the time they set the unrealistic bar that people attempt to reach in their real lives. Don't just shout buzzwords. Ground yourselves. Open up about your stories and how you overcame them with sincerity. Even if it's at a detriment to your clout. Let people see through the looking glass. Just for a second. How can anyone love you if you don't love yourself? It's such a damaging quote. It really feels like you're unlovable and it's your fault. Often having a healthy, loving relationship can help people who are dealing with feelings of self-loathing. I always see people post depressed quotes and things like 2020 made me realize who was there for and who wasn't. No. Everyone's going through this pandemic bullshit headache together. It seems as though everyone's struggling. Whether it's financially, mentally, or physically, health, we're all going through something and we shouldn't be acting selfishly expecting others to put their lives on hold to cater to ours. Not a therapist, but someone told me to just don't cut yourself. It'll make you look ugly. Lol, I had someone tell me to just stop cutting and to just eat a f***ing cheeseburger. Since I was self-harming multiple times a day at that point. Just not doing it wasn't an option. Since I was also going 3-4 days without eating while still partaking in sports, and somehow not dying or passing out. Just eating a f***ing cheeseburger wasn't an option either. It's a lot easier for people to sit there and say to just do X or just don't do Y as if it's that easy. Clinical psychology doctorate student and mental health support worker here. Anything to do with getting a full 8 hours. Eating healthily and exercise for depression. Yes. Those things can have a very positive impact on low moods, but clinical depression usually stems from something and that problem needs to be addressed before these lifestyle tips can truly serve their purpose. So much material is out there about recognizing toxic people. Assuming we are all victims who are attracted to the wrong type of people. In therapy, You may actually learn how you have behaved in maladaptive ways that have contributed to strained or prematurely cut off friendships. Not yet a therapist. Though I am currently in the process of applying to a clinical psychology program. Nearly a decade ago, as I was struggling with significant depression and suicidal ideation and was myself in therapy and on antidepressants. An individual who did not know this about me, as I was extremely private about this stuff, once went off about how depression is basically a label for a made-up disorder and that if someone's feeling bad, they just need to do a good deed to feel better. I didn't say anything at the time, but I wanted to sock him in the face as hard as I could. I regret to this day that I didn't call him out on his shit. But at the time, I was ashamed to be struggling with depression, needing therapy and medication. And I froze up. Not a psychologist but as someone with ADHD. Whenever someone tells me to concentrate, my brain shuts off whenever I try to force myself to concentrate and I have none of that sweet dopamine rush at the end that you get. It's more difficult than that. Stop recommending it every time I have something I have to do. I'm not a therapist but I have to chime in here. Subreddits like relationship advice etc have people that will do the absolute opposite of what they should be doing. People go to those places for advice on their love life and their worries and the majority of replies they get are sarcastic and hate-filled emotional punches. Can no one give actual advice within giving the whole I've been giving advice here for years so I know more than you vibe. Lately there's been an increase in social media posts telling people that self-care involves cancelling plans, eating junk food, not leaving the couch all day, and buying whatever you want. These are things that you shouldn't feel guilty about doing in moderation, but when done often can definitely worsen depression and anxiety. Self-care is all about finding a balance between loving yourself and treating yourself well and pushing yourself to be your best. That means things like eating healthy, exercising regularly, socializing with loved ones, and generally pushing yourself out of your comfort zone often are just as important as treating yourself and having quiet restful days. I always see stuff about positive thinking and how people have to be positive. That creates an unhealthy mindset. A better mindset is to practice mindfulness and to fully experience the things you're going through at the time you're going through them. Be in the moment. If that moment is shitty then that's okay. Be in that moment and feel what it feels like to feel bad. If it's happiness then accept that and be in the moment. What you don't want to do is focus on something in the future or past and feel bad feelings about that. But you also don't want to focus on the past or future and feel good feelings. That's not going to help you. Focus on yourself in the moment. Use marijuana to cope with anxiety and depression. Marijuana is a depressant and causes more anxiety after prolonged use. It also can lead to psychotic features and mental disorders. Marijuana has a lot of good uses such as pain management and increasing appetite. It is not an effective treatment method for mental health issues. Sufferer 1. I'm unemployed. Can't get a job. And am suffering from depression. Acquaintance 1. You are not your job. There's more to life than jobs. Sufferer 2. I'm lonely. Can't find dates, sex, relationships, etc. Acquaintance 2. You need to love yourself first. There's more to life than sex. Sufferer 3. I can't stay motivated or finish anything. Always getting lost and distraction. Acquaintance 3. You don't care enough and you need to take action. Speaking as someone who has suffered from mental health issues my entire life and have seen others struggle and lose the battle as well, I can say the worst advice you can say is it's all in your head. You just need to stay positive and focused. Or there are people who have it a lot worse than you do, like MF. Don't you think I know it's all in my head? I know there's people worse off too. Stop acting like you're saying something helpful. The focus on eating disorders is around anorexia. People associate AIDS with anorexia because that's what the media write about. Take to the bone, for example. But most people with AIDS are at a normal weight and suffer from bulimia, binge eating disorder, and other varieties. Without context, A lot of the depression and anxiety help you see online is pretty useless. It stems from the massive flood of positive psychology that has been going around for a decade. Not a psychologist. Just a patient. I was told I had to forgive to move on. I was physically and mentally abused by my parents and conditioned to believe it was my fault that bad things happened to me and my fault they lost their shit and hit me. I grew up hating myself and believing if I only tried harder and did better they wouldn't hurt me. It took me years to love myself enough to actually blame them for their own behavior. My anger at what they did to me is righteous. Forgiveness needs to be earned and I don't have to give that to them. Stop laying the blame on me by saying I'm hurting myself for finally holding them accountable. Clinical social worker here. And God knows I've seen plenty. One of the things that worries me most, and I haven't seen discussed as frequently, is technically good suggestions given by people lacking the training to properly implement them. A little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And while most people know they shouldn't play doctor without a license, the same doesn't always seem to apply for therapy. Tons of folks will make recommendations based off an article they read at some point which, while potentially correct, lack the critical context and support needed to actually be effective. For example, I've seen so many people encouraging the use of mindfulness without a strong understanding of what this concept actually is, what situations it's most useful for, or how to actually employ it as part of treatment. As a result, you end up with tons of people saying they tried a certain therapeutic approach and it didn't work. Not because they actually got the treatment, but because some random stranger gave them a half-assed lecture while swearing this one thing would be a perfect cure. It wasn't on social media, but I did watch a teacher of mine, who claimed to be a licensed therapist, tell a friend of mine that he was depressed because he listened to rap music and smokes weed. Oh, and according to this jackass, Asperger's isn't a thing and I'm not really autistic. I'm not a medical professional, but the advice that pisses me off the most is when I hear other people say get outdoors. Get some fresh air. Depression can't hit a moving target. Total load of BS for someone dealing with a mental illness. Another comes from a certain segment of society that says pray about it. God hasn't brought you this far to let you down now. In the group help addiction realm, the lone that does the most damage is people in recovery don't need meds. The 12 steps is all you need. Double quote. Seriously. If you are dealing with a mental illness, be it depression, bipolar, anorexia, or the plethora of other issues that people deal with, seek medical help. Don't listen to stupid people that don't hold a medical doctorate but want to throw around piss poor advice. I've seen some people post that mental issues are just excuses for your mistakes. That's in itself it's a problem because it doesn't allow self-reflection and understanding the condition you're in. Most of the be tough stuff can work on certain people that just need that last push. But on the other 99% of people can lead to dangerous results if taken too seriously. As we've seen in the past week with the elections. Not a therapist, but someone told me, stop being a whiny bee. It made me sick that you always told me that you're hungry but doesn't know if you want to eat every time. Double quote. Then months later he said, people who committed suicide are selfish. They don't think about the impact of people around them after they done that. Double quote. From that time I decided to save money for therapist. I see a lot of people using mental health terms and other terms when it doesn't actually apply. It takes away from people who actually suffer from these issues. For example, people saying they have OCD when they don't. People saying they survived a sexual assault when really they experienced sexual harassment. Really f'd up for somebody who was brutally raped to be coined under the same term as somebody whose ass was slapped. Even though both are wrong. People saying they have PTSD or were traumatized when they weren't. People saying their boyfriends were abusive when in reality he just was not boyfriend material. People saying other people are narcissists when really they're just arrogant. The list goes on. I have anxiety and panic disorder. If I had $1 for every time someone told me to just exercise or it's all in your head, I would have enough money to pay for all my therapy. The exercise one always pisses me off because while I do exercise and it does occasionally help, I can only do specific kinds because hard cardio simulates what panic attacks are like for me. I joined the cross-country team in high school because I was told running would help. I learned very quickly that the feeling of being out of breath triggered my anxiety. Yoga and dance are the best for me, but you shouldn't assume. Most people know what works for them. Just quit worrying. There's not need worry or be anxious. Gee. You know, I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder when I was really young. I've practically grown up with it. But the thought to just quit worrying has never crossed my mind. Seriously. Anxiety is like a fly in your head that you can't get rid of. Medicine and healthy lifestyle slows the fly down, but it's still buzzing every single worry whatever in your mind. Just be grateful, be positive. Positivity is good. Shoving down all of your emotions that are negative in favor of positivity is not. You get to be unhappy, struggle, be honest about how you feel. Life is tough. It is okay to not feel 100% upbeat all the time. I've been to a therapist once. When I was laying out all my emotional issues, she said, "Just don't think about them." I wanted to curse at her so badly, but I just smiled, thanked for her time and left. And of course I never went back.